and maybe someone else will join us down the road. Darren Mellering, it's going to remember. Morning, Darren.
Morning, Sensei. Happy New Year.
Morning.
Hey, Darren.
Oh, good morning,
Happy
everyone.
New Year.
Happy New
Hey,
Year,
Happy New
everybody.
Year.
Okay. And okay, so let's get going here. The first question is going to be a heavy topic for the first one. What responsibilities does a sensei have to his students beyond teaching the physical aspects of his art?
Whoa.
That's loaded. And does your dojo have standards for behavior that support the martial arts philosophy? Sensei sets the example and tolerance of prejudice or harassment. My sensei was big on harassment. You could get away with it in the 60s. Chris is joining us. Of course, back then it was, it wasn't sexual harassment or anything like that. It was just, and the other one in this topic is, where is a line drawn in terms of sensei involvement in resolving problems students may have? And that issue we may end up really having to tiptoe through, but who knows? Anyway, does your dojo have standards that support the martial arts philosophy as far as you know what it is? Or is there any kind of philosophy that you, of course, that's a different question. So I guess the question is, do we as sensei have any responsibilities to our students beyond teaching the physical aspects of the art? Let's start with that. That's a safe question.
Man, I'll tell you what, modeling behavior is the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay, modeling behavior. Okay. What about
Sensei, when I observe a class, the first thing I look is to see what kind of respect is being conveyed from the sensei to the class.
okay.
That's the first thing I want to see. And the reason being that if that's in place, then the sensei's modeling what he wants back from those students and can rightfully expect it back from the students. I treat you this way, I will be treated this way. You like the word expect. I don't use that when I talk to students, but I treat you with respect, and I want that back.
Okay.
It's interesting. Seldom does that conversation come up, and when it does, it's one-on-one on the side.
Yeah. I mean, I know from experience, both as a sensei and as a classroom teacher, that the only way to get respect is to extend respect.
Amen.
And I would like to get it from all of my students if it's in a public school environment, but that doesn't always happen. But I think developing a sense of respect and tolerance for differences in opinion are up there at the top. Any other thoughts on this, or is it too early Saturday morning?
It is. It's not early here. I can think of only one time, looking back, where a student's been asked to leave the dojo for because of their action outside of the dojo. They were younger, and they got in they were bullying a kid on a bus, and he ended up really damaging the kid's wrist. So he was asked it wasn't his first time. And then he was asked, you're not coming back again because he'd been told, don't use this stuff outside of the dojo. And he was playing around with it, and he really hurt someone, so he wasn't asked back.
Well, I mean, so are you saying that we're trying to help students develop some sense of moral responsibility?
Yeah, when to use it and when. Yeah, so I think that, physically, you teach them physically everything you can about jiu-jitsu, and then you have to give them some sort of guideline. You don't use this stuff unless you really have to. That's my thinking on that. And if you do, and if you're abusing it, then you're not going to come back to the dojo. And I can only think of one time that I heard of that's happened in my dojo.
Any other?
I came in a little bit late. I think I got the gist of the question, though. I think we have like a dojo kun, right? In most dojos, where it's basically, it's like a tradition. If you have any type of a traditional Japanese dojo anyway, you would have a dojo kun, which is a standard set of practices and rules. And it's going to be different, from within each dojo. So I think that provides the overall, at least high level structure, of how to live, how to, I don't want to say behave necessarily, but it leads to the right kind of behaviors, that you're trying to get from the students. Other than that, I think it's like a safety course, right? If you're going to learn to shoot a gun or drive a car or anything else, you need some basic things, and before you give them something that they can do damage with. I think some places probably have too little, and some places go overboard. Where they're trying to control every little behavior, of the person. So there needs to be a balance, but I think the dojo kun normally handles a majority of that. And like everybody else, if you've been teaching for any length of time, you're going to, run into challenges, whether you have to kick somebody out or guide them or whatever. But that would be true with, I would imagine, any business, right? I mean, in certain stores in Japan, if you walk in exposing tattoos, they'll throw salt at you. So,
I guess that's being assaulted. Anyway.
I'm with Chris Sensei. Actually, what he said is the dojo ethics in Japan, at least. So the Japanese are really strong in ethics, and it's that when you go inside the dojo, those basically the ethics that you have outside should be followed by the additional ethics inside the dojo, which is respect for the senpai and taking care of the kohai, and also part of the ethics would be cleaning the dojo, among others. So those things are basically the ethics of the dojo.
Okay. Who's going to say something?
Well, I think Japan is a different creature because their ethics and they're a much higher standard than anywhere in the world. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard about the soccer team that I think it was a sports team, and they were playing somebody, and then after the team they lost, and then all the fans stayed by and cleaned up the stadium because it's just part of Japanese culture. Like they're very respectful everywhere, so they bring it in the dojo. But other countries we're not all the same. So
Yeah, I think as Dave, I believe, said, we all have, as sensei, we have a responsibility to be the example, whether it be inside or outside the dojo. And that's hard for some people. Students understand, and it, different, I say, and I can say from being a classroom teacher, students behave differently in different classrooms dependent upon the expectations of the teacher and the personality of the teacher. And I think what we like to deny, that personality has nothing to do with the way we run our dojo or how we teach or our students interact with us, things of that sort. And that's really probably one of the main, how do you say it, characteristics of how the dojo gets run. Students can be tremendously is the word perspective? They can have tremendous insight just by seeing what other students in the dojo do.
Yeah.
I know if I walk into a dojo and students are lined up wearing 20 different uniforms and belts tied in 30 different ways, and some kids are running across the mat like there's no tomorrow. This is once class is going, not before or after, but there's a certain image that there's a certain image you present even when you aren't doing anything as a sensei. And that's maybe the hard part to maintain is, you're trying to create a certain illusion, and I don't mean that negatively. And yet sometimes you can be your own worst enemy to that. So this is a difficult subject. I don't know who came up with it.
Sensei, if I may, just add to what Dexter said. It's true. Dexter is correct about the Japanese being different this level, right? But just my observation, and I have seen that mostly the Japanese or even Koreans, and the same way when they're teaching, even if it's in the US, in Europe, among others, there's a standard. There's a standard being followed. Like all the Japanese are always, and even the Koreans are also higher. But I've also trained with Brazil, where they're more relaxed in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying, Dexter, right?
No, I know the Brazilian jiu-jitsu
It's more like
they keep some of the Japanese, but then other parts is just, they lean against the wall, they lie on the floor, they're relaxed, but they're very good at what they do.
That's true. That's true.
It's kind of their culture. It's their culture, right? I think they're more relaxed culture.
That's what exactly I was trying to say. It's like if you're coming from a Japanese or Korean background, it looks like the dojo doesn't have discipline.
Yeah, I think what happens is, now I had a Japanese sensei, and I tend to be generally a fairly easygoing person, but I do expect my students to, when they're going to step into the dojo, they stop and bow, exit, get on the mat, they bow, off the mat, they bow. Before they work out with each other, they bow. Afterwards, they bow. And it may just be a nod of the head. It's not, I'm going to bend over and kiss my toes. But there's a certain, to me, if you walk into any martial arts show, there should be a certain level of respect and courtesy extended to everyone, regardless of rank. And I see that in some dojo. I see blind obedience in other dojo. Some dojo, some schools, there's really no discipline at all. It's how do you say it? even when I taught public school, when my kids came into the quote classroom, the dojo, they were expected to stop at the door and bow.
Mm.
And one day, one of the kids asked, "Is that why some Japanese restaurants have a curtain that extends down from the top of the door so that you have to bend your head when you enter?"
Yeah.
This is an American thing. I don't know if it's in other countries, and I said, maybe that's the method to the madness. It makes you bow when you enter the place of business out of respect. But what happened was that my kids started doing this in other classrooms, which kids love to run in and out of classrooms, although it's quote unquote against school rules. But nobody can really enforce it. But the kids enforced it themselves because they simply stopped at the door as an indication of respect. And other teachers then started asking me, why are they doing this?
Mm.
And I explained myself. And they said, okay. But some of what we do in the dojo extends outward to other situations. And even if I see a student now that I haven't seen on the mat, they've grown up, they're an adult, everything, they're 20 years down the road. If we run into each other, surprisingly, they bow and say, "Hi, sensei." And this is, I don't know whether it's conditioned or out of respect or out of what, but we're doing something right.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the important things we try to get our students to do and be, is to be morally correct, whatever that is. People have different sets of morals, which is another issue. But we want our students to be respectful of themselves and others. And maybe that's one of our goals as sensei, beyond just teaching the physical aspects of the art. Whether it be having a code of ethics, or Chris, what do you got, kun?
Dojo kun. Yeah. It's like a set of, in every traditional, well, I mean, it should be here too, but it's usually posted somewhere, like when you walk into a dojo.
No.
And it's it could be like 10 things, it could be 3 things, whatever it is.
Right. I mean, I keep it down to 3. It's in the student handbook, which is
Yeah, me too.
humility, respect. I forgot what the third one is now. And there's a kanji for each one, but each one is dependent upon the other.
Yeah.
Because I learned a long time ago, and I'm sure Chris knows it, most of us do, the more rules you have, the more difficult it becomes to enforce them. And I mean, even
some places, when I was doing regular karate, we used to say before every class we said a certain thing, which is our dojo kun. We would say it, and everyone would repeat it. So that's just their way. But I find it a bit over the top, because people are just saying it and they're not really thinking about it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's a lot of rules. I think that's common in a lot of karate dojos, like old traditional dojos.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can have rules and you can have standards, but you have to, in my book, you have to keep them to a minimum, because simply for the sake of sanity, and you can spend all your time enforcing rules and not do any teaching.
Yeah.
But what you can do is, see, the nice thing about it also is that you can use the enforcement as a teaching process. It just depends on what your approach is. So it's funny because, when you said it's, people just say it and they don't know what it means. That could be true, because years ago, Ours is only 3 2. I mean, I grew up with a long list in the dojos I trained in. I realize it comes down to 3 things. So ours is honesty, integrity, perseverance. And so for the first like couple of years, everybody used to say it. It was on, every exam and everything. And then one day I decided to ask, what is honesty? And I got blank looks. And same with the other 2 things. So I changed it So now when we do the dojo kun, when we recite it at the beginning of the class, we say honesty, integrity, perseverance. And then the senpai will say honesty. And then the class will say, always tell the truth. Integrity, do as you say. Perseverance, never quit. So we've attached a definition, a meaning, to those things. And so whether it's during practice, things happen outside or whatever, it's going to end up hitting one or more of those things. So we use it as kind of a mentoring counseling thing is why is it important to tell the truth? Why is it important to stick with what you promised? And we use it as a teachable thing. And it really does work. And it, at least in my case, I found, especially with the kids, it makes a big difference. It just gives them some set of moral guidelines. Everybody's from a different background and stuff. So it just gives them something very simple, that I believe is necessary to be a good citizen in any society, to do well in and help others around you.
Okay.
Chris, please forgive my ignorance. The spelling of kun, does it have more than one spelling?
Well, it could. It's just like anything you translate from kanji, right? So
Yeah.
I think
You have to be careful with that one.
Yeah. Usually it's spelled Kun in English, but somebody else could spell it another way. But if you look up dojo kun, there should be a whole bunch of stuff out there, for it.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because phonetically, I want to put an H in there, Kuhn, kun. I don't know why.
You can. I don't think there's a set thing in English,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Transliterations are.
Well, because I don't know about in the United States, but that means something else up here in Canada. Kun.
Well, that's why the kanji is important sometimes, because it's kind of like hieroglyphics to me. It actually tells a situation or a story. So for like Budo, like the character for Bu, we always translate to martial arts, but that's not a literal translation, of Bu. It's made up of 2 parts, that kanji. One depicts like a person or a soldier, and then the long part of it is like a spear. So it's really somebody stopping violence, not committing violence, somebody that uses weapons, which is a sign of fighting or war, to stop violence. So in the right context, you're kind of like peacekeepers, and violence stoppers, rather than warriors. Here we just translate it to martial arts, which literally means military arts. Well, how many dojos actually teach military arts? It's a whole different thing. But it's too hard to re-educate people, so we all go with martial arts.
I prefer the term self-defense for a variety of reasons, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else we want to do with this topic?
I'll just throw one other thing out there, and that is sometimes when you show respect, you also model kindness. You see the sayings out there in a world where you can be anything, be kind. It's something you got to be careful of there when you talk about a two-edged sword, because sometimes students will interpret kindness as weakness and will jump on it and turn it inside out and use it, quote, against you or against the class. And you got to be, if you're going to be kind and model that, you also have to be ready to jump on it when it all of a sudden can be weaponized. And when that happens, you have to land it. and land it in front of the class, in front of everybody, so that they know that's not okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know. Usually a teacher or a sensei will, in my experience of martial arts, they're sort of separate from the class. They don't get too friendly with them. They don't go out for drinks often. And they don't, I don't know if that's an experience you've had with other people in other classes, in other schools and dojos. But you don't get over, like, there's a line between friendship and teacher, which is a subtle line.
All right,
Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely. If you're tutoring one-on-one, then there's a different dynamic. And then if you have even a small class, all of a sudden you've got a social setting, and you're exactly right. You need to be very,
you don't want to be the guy. Just
yes.
You're not. There has to be a point where you're the teacher still. You're not their buddy, and you're not like just trying things and doing stuff. You're still the teacher, and I find that with my sensei, he's, we'll go out sometimes as a group for drinks and stuff, and he never comes, and someone asks why he never comes, and he told someone off to the side, say he likes to keep things separate. He's the teacher, and he'll be friendly with us. He always is, but he's never too friendly, like hanging out with us too much. Which is, I understand it now that I'm teaching more myself.
I tell our students, sensei is friendly, but not your friend. So there's a difference. You can still be friendly, but being friends changes the boundaries. So
teacher first, friend second, kind of thing. And I think that's what I've heard said.
One of the things I've tried to follow and this comes from my first principle, if you're doing a good job as a teacher or sensei, you're walking on a fence. And on the one side, you can be too friendly and informal, and the students don't respect you. And if you go to the other side, and fall off, it's because you're unfriendly, inflexible. Students don't like you. I mean, it's a lose situation in either case. And so your quote unquote trick or responsibility as a sensei is to stay on that fence in a dojo environment. Even if you're not in the dojo, because you're a sensei, you have a responsibility to display a certain attitude, type of behavior. You're not going to be unfriendly to a student. I know, Dave, you said, kindness is important, but sometimes if you're being very, on a one-to-one basis, you can do this. If you're being very honest with your student, you may believe that what you are doing is an act of kindness, yet it may force a student to have some second thoughts about what they're doing, and they can sometimes see it as a quote-unquote threat to their well-being, whatever it is, or sense of righteousness, or and that as a sensei is something you have to be able to negotiate through with that student. And sometimes it's a matter of separating the issue from the student. It's student themselves. Dave, I know you're a good student. You're busting your buns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you've got to wash your socks once a week. And it may be that you want to, in my book at least, you want to do your best not to question the student's integrity itself whenever you can avoid it. Because once you tear down integrity, it's hard to build up, and it's hard to rebuild that relationship. So that's, that's it's a hard position to be in as a sensei, but you have you have to be willing to be honest with your students. They'll respect you for it in the long run. And
So-
they will be honest with you at times too. If you're, it's a two-way street. I've learned that.
So I was gonna say, when you're talking about washing socks, that's kind of like, if you're, as a sensei, you might have to at times mention their outside behaviors are affecting their in class. Like if they're let's say they have a problem with alcohol, you and they're coming, you have to say something, or their hygiene, or something they're doing outside of class that is coming into class.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be very careful, but yeah, you would have to say something in that respect, but
Yeah.
carefully,
It may be, I mean, you know,
because you're not. Yeah, you can't tell them directly.
Yeah.
Stop it. Yeah, like I know what you're saying. You have to be very careful.
I mean, Seke had a standard. His standard was, if you wear your gi, you wash it. And if you were in his dojo 2-3 nights a week, you were expected to have a clean gi
Mhm.
each class. And there was, Thursday nights was judo night, which meant the first hour was just unrelenting judo. And then the second hour was jujitsu. And he expected us during the break to change out of whatever gi we wore the first hour and into a clean gi for the second hour.
That's smart.
And so you're, you know, it's, and some students he wouldn't let on the mat if they had a dirty gi. That's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's not the student's fault, it's the parent's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Never taught the kid how to use a washing machine. How many of you learned how to use a washing machine as a child?
Well, yeah, not as a young child, but yeah.
Under 12, were you allowed to use a washing machine?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, expected to.
Yeah, I mean,
I would think so. Yeah, I know how to. Yeah, turn it on. Yeah.
I mean, I know this is a cultural thing, but you know, you know, sometimes it is not, if the student, particularly if they're a young person, sometimes the problem is not, let's say the manifestation of the problem is not their fault. And this is something you as a sensei have to find out somehow. And at what point do you talk to the parent?
Yeah. On that point, quickly, if young kids that don't drive, that are late for class, and they're got to drive with the parents are late, it's not the young kid's fault.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. You know, what do you do with a kid? You know, you let them in, but you have to speak with the parents eventually. It's like you have to be here on time. So
yeah, there's some things a student has no control over, and you have very little control over. And so
another thing about smelly gis and stuff is if someone's a smoker, that's fine. That's their problem if they want to smoke. But don't smoke before class in your gi, or don't leave your gi in your car with your cigarette smoking up the car. Because when you come on the mat, it's like I've experienced it before a couple times, and it's horrible. Nobody likes it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work with that. You know, it can really, the whole dojo can be reeking of cigarettes if that's what they do.
Seki even used to have, on occasion, he'd do a nail check.
Yeah, nails. Yeah.
To make sure everybody's nails were cut and clean.
Yeah.
And that's the worst after holidays.
Yeah.
That is the worst. If you've ever been cut by, they forget. Kids forget.
Actually, Sensei, like Chris mentioned, the dojo kun on the wall, it says there clean doggy and cut nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I've, excuse this. Okay, just a second here. What? Hi, Kim. Yes, I am. Do you want to talk to Mom? Okay, just a moment. Back in a moment. Keep talking.
While he's gone, I'll just throw out that if you cut your nails, it makes it easier and smoother on shark bites.
On what? On what?
Shark bites.
Shark.
Pinch the skin.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, if you guys haven't learned of the homeopathic, taking unflavored gelatin every other day or so, not a bad idea for a bunch of reasons, but nice nails when it comes to shark bites.
All right.
Strong nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
And
Yeah, they can be
have skin all over their bodies, so shark bites are a great tool.
Yeah, sure.
Even from little sharks. Okay.
It's an insane name for that, I know.
I've never heard that.
For lack of a better term, I think we've nailed this topic down. But let's go on here. And second question is, does your martial art, guru or dojo, or you as a sensei espouse a certain philosophy to your students? Okay. And the second part is, do you expect them to follow your philosophy? If you do espouse a certain philosophy, or what part of it do you Eris, you can, where's Aris? You can speak up anytime you want. You don't need to raise your hand to speak. If,
I saw Shatara Sensei raising his arm. I think he wants to say something.
yeah, and Aris,
Sorry, I didn't. If I raised my hand, I did it without wanting to say anything. But thank you.
yeah. Do any of you espouse, or it's obvious from what we talked about before, we are espousing a certain philosophy. Okay. The issue is it generic enough for everyone to accept, or does your dojo espouse a particular religious philosophy? I know when I taught Jujitsu in public school, we had a large Seventh-day Adventist population in our community. And one of the questions that was expressed to me right from that, in fact, the principal asked me this question before we approved the program. He says, there are some religious groups that would very much oppose bowing of the head because it's a sign of subservience. And which within the Seventh-day Adventist religion, that's a real no-no. And I said, well, yes, we do bow. It's next day. I said, but it's a sign of respect, mutual respect, much like a handshake. It's not an indication that the student is subservient to the sensei or anything of that sort. So, which result, I did get some additional calls from parents that expressed the same concern, and I responded the same way, and they were happy with that. But the question is, there are some dojos that say this is the correct way to do it because our faith says we should do it this way, or what have you. Any thoughts on whether your dojo does anything like that, or whether your thoughts on a dojo that espouses a particular religious viewpoint, or?
We don't have any sort of, we keep religion out of it. We had one time, one student younger, and the parents they refused. The parents wouldn't have the student kneel. They do a kneeling bow in the beginning of class and the ending of class. So the sensei said, okay, then would it be okay if they did a standing bow? And they said, oh, yeah, that was fine. But for whatever their religion was, they weren't supposed to kneel and bow to a person. I'm not sure what the religion was. But.
Yeah.
So
has anyone else run into situations like that, or?
Yeah.
Mm.
I can tell you, just for me too, years ago, Sensei, you remember Sensei Combs and, the whole Aikido, group there. I used to teach Aikido at their seminars, when they used to have it. And in the Aikido circles, it was, when the teacher walked up, first they bowed to the kamisa, and then they clap 3 times, bow again, and then they bow to the group. So when I used to walk up, I just bowed to the group. I didn't do that part. Inevitably, somebody always came up after, and asked why I didn't do that. So I used to say, do you know why you do it? You know what the kamisa is. And it's part of the tradition and this and that. I said, well, actually, there's a religious context to it.
Yeah.
And it's a deity. And also you clap 3 times, to awaken the spirits in the dojo to help you train better. I said, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't, subscribe to that. So I don't do that part, but you can still be respectful to the students and your hosts and, by communicating those things up front. So I don't have any religious things. And, I look at even the traditional things in its context to see if there's any religious connotation or anything. And I leave those things out, but most things don't, except for a few things. So if somebody hasn't, like, we also don't allow jewelry and things, for safety reasons, but once in a while you get people that have some religious thing that they have to wear something one way or the other. And so we just do the best with it to keep them and others safe, to secure it, the best they could.
Yeah.
But if somebody doesn't want to bow or whatever because of, whatever they believe in, I don't have a problem with that. It's not a cult, it's not a religious movement.
That's right.
We explain it. It's for respect and for cohesion and to get your mindset, correctly. But if it violates, something you believe in, then fine. Just don't do anything that's disruptive. Other than that, it's okay.
To add up, Sensei, to what Chris mentioned, in the dojo, Aikido really, the kamisa is like it's also the other term is kamidama, or the house of kami,
Yeah.
the deity. Okay.
Spirit,
So
kami.
yeah, the spirit, the kami. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is that most of us are basically Christians, right? And so we were told by the Japanese teacher that you don't have to bow down to the kami. Okay, you just have to bow down for tradition. But the other problem is that after we bow down and we clap, he also does the meditation, or he does the prayer, the Shinto prayer. So most of us, it's not that easy to do that, because you're just bowing to the kamidama all the time. So the solution was that we can pray whatever prayer that we want, but silently. So basically, just to get away with that problem. But yeah, it's a big problem for a lot of people as well.
What I will do is if there are, like, as Dexter said, I've had an occasional student that, this is a religious symbol I wear. I, really do not want to remove it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my response is, I respect that. However, my concern is your personal safety, and I also would not like to see that religious necklace or whatever it is torn off your body accidentally, because it would damage it. And in my book, that then shows disrespect to the religious symbol. So if you want to continue to wear it, please be aware that this is what can happen. And in every case, the student has whatever they were wearing, taken that off. Sometimes you just have to change the context of the argument, and let it be their quote unquote moral decision. And they learn something in the process as well. That you respect what they believe, and you don't want to see any damage come to it. It's kind of like Eric saying, that prayer, it's said silently, and you're still respecting that person and what they believe in, but your concern is for their safety and the respect given to whatever they believe in. And that's kind of hard to do sometimes on the spur of the moment. Come up with something rational that's acceptable to the person to get them to do what you would like them to do, so that they're not in violation of any safety standards. It's not easy when you're dealing with other people's philosophies, because you don't want to step on their toes. That's probably one of the fastest way to lose students.
Yeah,
is to show them, is to be disrespectful to them, and people interpret respect in many different ways.
It's like keeping religion and politics, just keep them out of the dojo.
Yeah,
it's probably best practice, because everyone has different views, and you're just going to cause a problem.
Yeah,
and you're going to lose students.
Okay, we have a couple people that have been stoically silent all morning.
Uh-oh.
I don't know.
Thomas and Darren, any feedback or thoughts? Or
The bowing thing seems to be the only one that I've run into, and for reasons that already been mentioned, particularly referring to it as some sort of religious act. And my explanation was, look, we're going to, before you two people are going to interact, you're going to bow to each other and say, this is the beginning of our practice. And then we bow at the end to say, this is the end of our practice. Make sure that nobody's going to get clocked while they're waiting for the other person to start. And that seemed to be okay. I don't think I ever had any other pushback than that, but it would come up until I explained it, and then, oh, okay, that's fine, we can deal with it. Beyond that, no. I will add the other, reinforce, I think it was Dexter said the same thing. Politics and religion stays out of the dojo. If you want to do that, leave. Please leave, go out of the room, go somewhere else, because it's not healthy.
okay.
No.
For me, Sensei, it just I had a couple of comments, but then Chris, Aries, and Dave jumped in, and their comments were pretty consistent with what we do, and so there was no need for me to add to that. I agree with what all three of them had said, and as what Thomas was just saying right there, I also agree with his last comment as it's related to how he handles that situation in the past. And I just there's sometimes some light conversation about politics in class, but for the most part, politics and religion pretty much stay out of the dojo.
Yeah, I think the main issue that we're all covering here is the issue of some philosophies or religions take different attitude towards what is perceived as subservience. And the best, if that issue comes up, perhaps the best response is, it's a matter of respect or courtesy, rather than we're bowing to the sensei or we're bowing to. I mean, I can go overboard of this. We'll start a class, everyone kneels down and bows to the sensei, and then they turn and bow to the east, and then they turn to the corner and bow to the artificial waterfall, and then they bow go back center and bow to the sensei, and then it's time for the class to be over. And I know that's an exaggeration, but I have seen some dojo where there is a real, I don't object to formality, but it runs into the same problem as the sensei who insists on being called all of his titles before you ask him a question. And by the time you get through all the titles of their ranks and all that other stuff, you've forgotten what the question is.
Mm.
Which is probably the subtle intent of requiring all the titles, is so that you don't ask the sensei questions. But anyway,
So, Professor Kirby, and everybody, in our dojo, we tend to keep religion and politics out for the sake of peace. We want to, we don't want any animosity or anything like that in the dojo. But personally, myself, I believe in a religion, and in my religion, I believe in one deity. So, and if I was to bow to somebody, for religious reasons, I'll be damned, literally. Okay. So if the question ever comes up, why do we bow each other? We're not allowed to do it in our religion, so on and so forth. I use myself as an example. I will never do it in worshiping another statue or person or whatever. And it's basically a different way of doing a handshake. It's for mutual respect, which was one of Kano's things that he Kano Shihan preached, and we follow that basically. That's our rule: mutual respect. As far as everything else is concerned, another rule we have is we don't have children under the age of 14. Okay, so we don't basically we don't have to deal too much with bringing them up. But if there is any form of disrespect, and there has been in the past, we would just ask the person to leave the dojo.
okay. Yeah, and there are different ways to handle the issue, and as long as we find a way that's manageable and that's not disrespectful to anyone,
Mhm.
that's the key. The key is from, I don't know who mentioned it at the very outset. The key is respect.
Mhm.
And as a sensei, if we show that respect, even though it may differ from something we believe in, there's no single right way.
Mhm.
And you have to be willing to allow for different people's beliefs, things of that sort. And the key is to be respectful of that and respect yourself in the process. And if you can express yourself in a manner that allows you to show that, that's in the reason for reason why you are thinking.
I'm back. Hello.
Most people will respect you for it.
Mhm.
Because you're being upfront and honest with them. And that's a high demand issue, is that you respect other people, as I think Dave said it right at the outset of our discussion. That's that's the number one item.
Mhm.
So
Are we still talking? I got cut off. Are we still talking about politics and in the dojo and things?
not really, no. I think we're talking about different senseis may have different religious perspectives.
I got cut off. So I was wondering.
And so sometimes you have to find a way. Oh, I'm not. It's a poor choice of words. You have to find a workaround that still shows respect for everyone. And sometimes that's challenging.
Yeah, I thought of something. This is an incredible example of leaving everything out of the dojo. So for a while, I was doing judo at a different dojo a few years ago, right as the war was starting in Ukraine. So it was when I joined this dojo to start doing a bit of training there, as soon as I walked in, people asked me if I was Russian. Because there was a high percentage of Russians and Ukrainians, and there was no war going on, like not the recent what's going on in Ukraine. That wasn't happening yet. So as I'm training there, everything's fine. No one's talking about anything. I remember one night I leave the dojo and my buddy calls me on the phone and he goes, "There's a whole line of Russian infantry and trucks heading into the Ukraine." I thought he was joking, but it was true because they of what, we all know what's happened. So then I go back to the dojo the next night thinking, oh my God, this is going to be horrible because we've got Ukrainians and Russians that are like friends. All of a sudden, there's a war going on. Nobody mentioned it. No one mentioned anything for weeks and weeks and weeks. No one ever mentioned it. And I thought that was the most incredible thing. Everybody knew without saying a word not to mention the war because that could just cause massive fights between the Ukrainians and Russians that had been training for years, friendly for years. So I thought that was incredible that everybody knew ahead of time. It was never mentioned.
It's
incredible.
It's amazing, and you really, if you go back, because I used to teach history, and go back to World War I, and during the Christmas holidays, when the French and the Germans weren't fighting each other, they'd exchange beer, wine. They tried to. Soldiers are soldiers, and they probably have more in common than they do in differences. And the politics and whatever it is just went out the window. We said we're going to celebrate the holiday, and I think, or celebrate who we are. And I think that's the same, to an extent, the same thing we try to convey in the dojo by keeping politics, religion, and those things out of the dojo, because we know that to allow them in could just cause an incredible number of problems.
Oh, yeah.
And
especially in that situation in the judo, I mean, you imagine everyone must have had their views, but if something was said wrong and you're already wrestling with someone, you know how that would be just terrible. So it was a very interesting situation. It was very solemn. The dojo was a different atmosphere when I came back after the war begun. You could just see they were getting about their business, but everybody was quiet because there's a lot of Ukrainian families that had family over in the Ukraine still, and they're like wondering, what's going to happen, and we all know what happened. So it was a very interesting time. Yeah,
it's hard to keep your mouth shut.
I had no.
I mean, in that type of situation.
No, me, I had no say in anything, but it was really interesting to me because I'm not Ukrainian. I don't have a Russian background, but I knew all the people there some of them didn't speak English well, and I knew they were Russian. So I was like, or Ukrainian. So I was like, wow, but everyone had enough sense to just zip it. Yeah.
Dexter, any idea how that came about? I know you weren't there beforehand, but it seems like there had to have been something established in the culture of the dojo so that
I think
when something happened, there wasn't going to be a problem.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure who. I was only there for maybe like 6 or 7 months, but I just think judo is kind of like that. You just kind of. I found that especially in judo, people work with each other, and we don't talk about much else other than judo, and I think that's part of the. I think that is part of the judo itself, that they kind of leave everything outside of the dojo. I don't think it had to be said. I think everyone just knew that they wouldn't say anything about it. So outside of the dojo, they may have talked about it, but inside there was just no word.
not to change the topic somewhat. Uh, but at the end of this second question, it says, do you look at your students' attitudinal growth as part of your promotional requirements? Do you look, I mean, because you are as a sensei and as a martial artist and within your martial art trying to convey a certain philosophy or certain types of behavior, certain manners, whatever you want to call it. How they treat each other, how they treat themselves, how they respect themselves and others, all these other generally immeasurable values that parents would love their kids to pick up on. And sometimes that's why they send them to a martial arts school, which to me is, on the one hand, it's saying, okay, that's okay, but what did you miss doing as parents? But anyway, do we make any part of that part of our promotional criteria? Do any of you make that? Do you look at that as part of your promotional criteria?
That goes back to the conversations that we had a few meetings ago, particularly promoting somebody to a Dan rank. In my case, I wouldn't care about a white belt to a yellow belt. I wouldn't be looking at it there. But as they're getting up into the brown belts and black belts, yeah, then it makes a difference because they've got to set the tone for when they start teaching. And I take responsibility for that. Probably shouldn't, but if they're not teaching, if they're not teaching respect, I failed as their teacher. So yeah, I take it into consideration as more and more as they get higher and higher in rank.
I mean, at lower ranks, I'll say, are they following the rules in the dojo? Do they have a clean gi? Are they following directions? It's really rudimentary stuff. But as they move up in rank, I tend to look at, are they willing to work out with other students? Are they being a good uke? Are they, there are a whole slew of subjective, and they are subjective, criteria that I think will ultimately help make them a better person, student, and hopefully someday a good sensei. And that's why there's, if you look at this, my student handbook, there's a section in there called attitude. And most of the time, the student will get full credit. Because I usually will not test a student unless I'm pretty sure they can make it anyway. And to me, a test is really a formality, or it should be a formality. Because none of us like to take tests and not pass. It's kind of self-defeating. Otherwise, so I guess the question is, I know Thomas has expressed this. Anybody else have any other thoughts? And does a student's attitude play any role in whether or not they get a promotion at any particular rank? I mean, I understand for black belt, you're looking definitely for some things. And if you haven't got to that student to that point and they're still with you, in my book, I have failed. And I think Thomas I'm pretty sure Thomas feels the same way.
Yeah.
Which is, why are they still in a dojo? That's the other side of the coin. But do we look at anything beyond the physical aspect in promotional criteria?
I think work ethic when they're in the dojo. If they're just kind of there, just going about the business, not putting as much effort in is, say, someone next to them. The person who's putting in the effort should be looked at, I think, more than those who are not putting in the effort.
Okay.
I think that, yeah.
Any other thoughts? Okay, this has been a rough session. I think topics are too heavy for the start of the year, but let's deal with one more, which should be relatively easy. I really hope, and that is there any value to a standardized uniform in the dojo?
Yes. Next topic.
Yeah, that's what a uniform is, right?
Yeah.
Definition of the word, uniform.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, if you were a parent and you walked into a dojo and everyone's wearing an identical uniform,
yeah,
their behavior is to a standard, etc. What does that tell you as a parent? Or it's just someone coming in to observe the dojo? What is
Sensei, if I may, there is a big issue right now in the BJJ world.
Oh,
Because I think you know that, Dexter, right? So somebody, I think another Gracie guy, he wanted to bring back all the white doggy back in the dojo, because right now you go in a BJJ dojo, you can see pink, gray, black, white. Yeah, it's like, it's so colorful, right? But
yeah, you have like everything.
yeah, you have everything.
Custom made Iron Man, like they have everything.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
you don't need the gi anymore, you just sew the patches together.
Some of them are really nice and they're expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. So not no disrespect to them, but the problem was during the time of the Gracie, the white doggy, they have a lot of patches everywhere, right? It's white, but it's like all the patches there, like I don't know, I can't even read some of them. So it's like if they want to really go back to the traditional white, they also have to do away with the patches. So yeah, going back to the uniform, it has to be uniform, like what Dexter said.
I mean, some patches for sure, but I mean, they have patches for every seminar that they've been to. They got like why? It's not the Boy Scouts,
I mean, I
don't do BJJ, but I've experienced. I've been in BJJ dojos, and I've seen it's just completely different. That's just their way, but there is no. It's not a uniform.
Go ahead.
Anything goes.
Darren, no audio.
I think Darren's trying to say something. Your voice is off.
I forgot I turned it off. I'm sorry. I hear everybody's comments. It's all in, I think, the evolution of martial arts. Look, traditionally, the dojo would require everyone to be in a uniformed appearance, typically a white gi. And through my time in training, that's how it was. I wasn't able to wear any color gis for a long time, years. But time has changed, and people want to be able to put their own personality, and I think that comes within their uniform as well. Inside my dojo, it's relaxed. During a regular night, it's okay that anybody wear any color that they want to. However, if we do have a formal event, such as a promotion, then I do require everyone to be in a uniformed appearance in a white gi.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's rational.
Yeah.
I had a student for a while.
Makes sense, yeah.
A new student, and this went on for about 4 weeks. Every night he'd show up in a different color kung fu outfit, and after the second night, I said, "You don't run around streets wearing a kung fu outfit. Someone thinks you're wearing PJs or something like that." It was really, it was a nice uniform, etc. Silky, and one night I think it was even gold colored. I said, you have a choice in here. This is the standard. You either wear street clothes or judo gi. single weight is fine, white judo gi. And he dropped out because of that. You know, he was coming along okay, his fourth or fifth week. You know, he had some experience, but he wanted to wear his colorful gis. I said, this is not, you know, this is a traditional jujitsu dojo. I will allow certain patches on the gi. That's the standard in my dojo. And if a student wears something else, I'll ask them to take it off. Because I like to have that standard so that if people come in and visit the dojo, they're seeing consistency, which is what a lot of people want. They want to see consistency so that they know if they do, you know, there's a pattern to what's going on, how people are expected to behave. It's like having a dress code in school or at work. You know, and you can have a lot of sometimes you can have a lot of flexibility within a dress code, and sometimes you can't, but there's something there.
Sensei, there's a lot of different perspectives you can look at it.
Yes.
And so let's play devil's advocate, if you will, a little bit, right?
Okay.
And so if someone starts a martial art in a different school, a different system, and they invest in them wanting to be able to participate as a practitioner, and they buy a uniform, and then in that particular school, they were required to wear, I don't know, let's just say a blue gi, and the blue gi had these patches on it, and then they've trained for some time, and they were very interested in it, and then for some reason they were no longer going to train at that facility. They wanted to move to another facility, let's say, then they come to mine, right? And then I'm requiring that individual to wear a white gi, but they don't have the financial means to be able to go out and get a white gi. They have invested into like this blue gi, but they want to train, and they've chose to come to my dojo now. And so I just think that there's a lot of different dynamics that you could say, if you held strong to a rule, when it may not necessarily be applicable to the individual's intention, that you would eliminate people instead of adapting to what today's culture is, and saying, okay, this person has started here. It may not have the means to be able to do something that I'm going to require, and is it that big of a deal, right? And so traditionally, I understand that, and that's why I change it between my, you know, the normal everyday class, for different reasons, not just the one that I gave when I said during my normal classes, I allow people to wear whatever color gi that they want to. And then when it's a formal event, I say it's a white gi. But there's other dynamics, there's other considerations, there's other reasons why people may or may not be able to have that. And one of my things is I don't want to turn people away or not allow people to be able to participate because they can't, for whatever reason it might be.
Yeah. And what you're saying is an extremely valid concern. And judo gi are expensive. It depends on what kind you get, but they are expensive. We usually will, in our dojo, we usually bulk order gis, and we sell them at cost because we pick them up wholesale. We'll order 5 or 10 gis at a time, which, you know, and also sometimes students will grow out of a gi, or they've left.
Yes.
They'll say, "Would you like the?" So sometimes we'll even have used gi.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
If a student there's a financial issue, here, take it.
Yeah.
You know, do I have to pay for it? No, it's yours. I agree with you, Darren, 100%. You know, gis, you know, when I started a size 4 or size 5 judo gi single weight from Japan, maybe it was $15. This is back in the 60s and 70s. So, and now wholesale, they're probably $60, $70 wholesale, and that's a lot of money. And I agree with you. And retail is totally different ballgame. I mean, there's some judo gi that, you know, single weight they'll charge you $150 for it.
Oh yeah.
You know, so Darren, I agree with you completely. They're really, a person should not be limited in their ability to learn something because of the clothing they have to wear or supposed to wear. I mean, if I've, I mean, sometimes I've even, on rare occasion, I've even given a new uniform to a student. If I really, you know, the parents come to me and say, you know, we're really in financial problem. We'd love to have the kid continue, but this is a really expense we simply cannot afford. And you know, well, I'd much rather see the students stay in the program, even though it's going to cost the dojo $50-$60 to give them a uniform for free. It's a hard place to be in, and I feel for a lot of students. We don't, you know, we don't require that they have a judo gi until they have passed their first test, and then in order to get the promotion, they need to have the gi. So you know they've got at least 8 to 10 weeks before this issue becomes an issue that has to be addressed one way or the other. But you know, different. You know, some. I like to get students into judo gi as quickly as possible. Sometimes they get tired of seeing their clothes torn, street clothes torn, and that's why I tell them don't wear anything in class that you value. You know, wear old clothes that you don't mind having torn. And you have to be perfectly upfront with students because you know, clothes are expensive. I mean, I just got a couple of t-shirts for Christmas, Under Armours. You know, about $35 a piece.
Yeah. That's
incredibly expensive for me, considering when I was a kid, you could pick up, you know, 2 for $5 at the J.C. Penney's. And you know, you just have to be you have to be considerate and flexible. So you know, I'm not objecting to your situation, dear, but you know, I think sometimes there is a workaround. Chris.
No, I'm sorry. I was just dropping off, just waving bye. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sensei, I like to circle back. It's not the same scenario, but a related topic, and I just think that I probably should have commented on it earlier when we had initially talked about it. But just a comment that I think would help expand all of our minds in understanding, you know, what, or not overlooking what others may encounter during the day. And earlier today we were in the topic one, I think the first or the second topic today, and we talked about we were talking about just different dojo rules and routine and etiquette and stuff like that. And I just think that if someone ever comes to my class and let's say they're 5 minutes late, I don't care if they're 5 minutes late, if they're 15 minutes late, if they're 30 minutes late, and even more so, and I'm gonna break this down a little bit, and you'll get where I'm going with it. If they come to my class and I only have 15 minutes left in my class and they show up, I always encourage that to everyone that's a practitioner from my class. And the reason why is because you never know, no one here knows what goes on in someone else's day. You just never know. You don't know what reason why they couldn't make your class. You don't know why they were late. You may not understand what type of a day that they had, what encounters they've had that day, but you do know this. They made your class. They made the effort to make your class. 15 minutes late, 30 minutes late, 15 minutes left of class. They made the effort to be there. Maybe throughout their entire day, the only one thing that they were looking forward to is making your class. And to me, that's a tremendous honor, respect that someone has taken the time, has made the effort to make that class. If you turn that individual away, you don't, they could have had the worst day of their life. But the one thing that they were looking forward to was making your class. And to me, that just shows respect. And so if you see somebody coming into your class late, just be open-minded that they made that effort to be there.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, if a student comes in late, you know, they just get their stuff in, they bow onto the mat, you know, and they participate. They will usually let me know at the end of class or during the break. I'm sorry, sensei, I was late, you know, and I'll say, you know, no problem. I said, I understand. It does happen. Okay. Even when I taught public school, if I had a kid come in late and they just sat down and got to work, I didn't mark them tardy. I've got better things to do with my life. You know, if it's a regular problem, then I'll say, you know, what's going on. But I think what you're saying is it's their attitude. They want to be there. They want to do well. They also probably feel bad about being late. They don't need to be chewed out for that. And it's all on how we make them, how they feel when they come into the dojo. And if we make them feel welcome, that's really all we can ask for. We want our students to feel welcome coming into our dojo. Because if you came into the dojo 5 minutes late and I chewed you out, how many students who for some reason might come in late down the road would not come to class at all because they don't want to be chewed out for being late? You know, it doesn't, I mean, I could say you have to choose your battles. And that's not one that's not really winnable. But like I said, if it's a regular problem, then you need to talk with the student off to the side, you know.
But like you said, Sensei, you understand the dynamic from the individual that comes in. You use the classroom environment as the example. If they come in and they immediately start getting to work and they start to go with the flow with what's going on in the program. The same thing with the dojo. The dojo, when somebody walks in the door, they're bowing before they approach. They go in and they change. They wait on the side doing their own warm-ups until they're invited on the mat. And so you understand those dynamics. If they just come in and it's disruptive and they're rude and they're not going through the formalities or the respect portion of being invited onto the mat and stuff like that, then you know you have an issue. Or it's something that's recurring or, you know, continues to be a problem. You understand the dynamics behind those things.
Yeah. In Seki's class, if you came into class late, you were expected to sit on the bench off the mat until he would nod his head to you, you could get on the mat. You know, that was then. This is now. But I think, you know, I think you're absolutely right. I know there are people that make big issues out of absolute punctuality. And I always found it was more easy. Great grammar. It was easier to base your decisions on not how long they were there, but what they did while they were there. And I think that's what you're saying. Since sometimes students can't make it on time, it's not their fault. There can be a number of factors. They might tell you at the end of class as to what the problem was, and life goes on. You know, so I think a lot of it comes down to, you know, what their attitude is, and their attitude is based upon what we're going back to Dave and respect, is what values you have conveyed to them in terms of their behavior with respect to the dojo. And if they come in and they do all the right things right, you know that person is on your side. And that's And someday there'll be a good sensei. But anyway, and anyhow, I think at this point, we need to stop. Again, our next meeting will be in February, because the second one this month I've had to cancel due to some conflicts. And so we'll be back on board the first Saturday in February. And if you have any other topics you want to throw in there, send me an email. And I'll thank all for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
I probably won't. Usually Saturdays I'm at Jujitsu, so we're on holiday now, so I probably won't see you guys until maybe in the summer again. So
Okay.
Yeah.
With a holiday.
And Darren,
or a holiday.
Darren, you can take the sign down that says timeliness is next to godliness. Anyway, I'm kidding.
See y'all. Happy New
See
Year.
y'all.
Happy
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Thank you. Bye.
Have a happy New Year, everyone.
Okay, see you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.